There are moments in life when something inside us quietly whispers, "There's more." Not more things, not more accomplishments, but more of you. Something deeper, truer, waiting to emerge from beneath the noise of daily survival. If you've ever paused in silence and felt that soft ache of potential, like a version of yourself is calling from a future you haven't yet lived, then you're exactly where you need to be. Joe Dispenza teaches us that our brain is not simply a recording device for memories, but a compass capable of pointing toward new futures if we dare to interrupt the pattern. And that interruption begins with awareness, with a single pause, just long enough to feel the gentle, almost imperceptible nudges of the universe guiding you back to yourself. Napoleon Hill once wrote that desire backed by faith is the beginning of all miracles. But what if the desire you've been chasing isn't outside you, but already vibrating within, blocked only by your inability to stop and listen? This video isn't just content, it's a sacred moment of stillness, an opportunity for you to reconnect to the invisible forces shaping your destiny, a guide through the inner terrain of subtle signs, hidden frequencies, and intuitive whispers that point toward your highest self. And as Carl Jung reminds us, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives and we will call it fate. So pause with me now, not just to hear, but to truly feel. The universe is already speaking. This is your invitation to finally listen. Silent signals. When the universe speaks without words, not all communication is verbal. Some of the most powerful truths arrive without sound, through a subtle shift in energy, a repeating number on a clock, a sudden emotion that arises for no reason, or a situation that repeats until its meaning is undeniable. These are not coincidences. These are conversations. The universe is not mute. It speaks in vibrations, in patterns, in presence. But its voice is soft and most people are too loud inside to hear it. There's a form of tiredness that no amount of sleep cures, a spiritual fatigue that creeps in when your outer life continues on, seemingly functional, yet something inside you remains unfulfilled, stagnant or fragmented. You smile, you work, you show up, but beneath the surface, something feels misaligned. This is the ache of disconnection, from your purpose, from your inner wisdom, from the flow of the universe that once felt alive in your bones. It is here, in this subtle discomfort, that the universe begins to whisper again. Joe Dispenza often reminds us that our bodies become the unconscious mind. The emotions we repeat become memorized. The frustration, the worry, the fear, they create a baseline frequency, and that frequency becomes a filter for reality. So when someone says nothing ever changes, it's not the world that's unchanging. It's the signal they've been sending out consistently, without awareness. The universe mirrors not your words, but your energetic state. And when that state is rooted in the past, life can only echo old stories. What happens when you finally pause? Not for a quick breath, not as a technique, but as a real interruption in your energetic momentum. Something extraordinary begins to unfold. You start to notice what was always there, the small synchronicities, the dream you had that mirrored a conversation, the feeling that warned you before something went wrong, the sudden clarity that rises in silence. These are not accidents. They are signposts, reminders, and the only reason they've felt faint is because we've been loud. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, the meaningful connection between inner and outer events with no causal link, but with profound relevance to the soul. Most dismiss such moments as chance, but those on the path know better. A thought of someone seconds before they call, a book falling open to the exact line you needed, a stranger speaking the answer to a question you never voiced. These are the ways the universe winks at you. Not through grand miracles, but through gentle alignment. The danger is in overlooking these whispers, in thinking that only big events carry meaning. The truth is, the subtler the sign, the more precise the message. Loud disruptions often come only when we've ignored the quiet guidance for too long. The universe doesn't punish, it recalibrates. It amplifies what we refuse to feel the first time, that persistent discomfort in your job, that relationship that feels energetically heavy, the repeated patterns that bring you pain. They're not failures, they're mirrors held up by something greater than you, asking you to listen deeper. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness, waiting to be heard. When you remove the mental clutter of expectations, of control, of incessant thought, You begin to inhabit a different frequency, and that frequency is not passive, it's magnetic. It draws clarity, it attracts solutions, it reveals the next step without you forcing it. Dispenza teaches that when we enter elevated emotional states, gratitude, love, presence, we shift from survival to creation. We move from reaction to resonance. And in this resonance, signs are not only easier to perceive, they become impossible to ignore. Most people don't miss the signs because they're rare. They miss them because their nervous system is locked in survival. The mind is constantly scanning for danger, replaying worries, strategizing control. In that state, even the clearest message can't break through. Presence isn't just poetic, it's a neurological reset. When you are present, you switch off the stress response and awaken the part of your brain that perceives possibilities. You begin to co-create, not just survive. The signs don't come because you earned them. They come because now you're finally tuned in. The mistake is thinking these signs are instructions. They're not commands to follow, but frequencies to feel. They don't demand immediate action. They invite alignment, a shift in how you hold yourself, in how you respond, in how you attune to the deeper intelligence within and around you. This is not about being perfect. It's about being present enough to notice when the familiar pain shows up again, and curious enough to ask what it's trying to teach you now. Life in its deepest truth is not linear. It's cyclical, and the universe speaks in loops. Repeated lessons, familiar discomforts, recurring dreams. Each cycle isn't punishment. It's an invitation to wake up, to choose differently, to return to your center. The sign is never outside of you. It only appears there because inside something is ready to evolve. And when that inner readiness meets outer reflection, change becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Imagine standing by a river. You've been fighting the current for so long, paddling upstream, exhausted and confused. But one day, something inside you lets go. You turn the boat around, you stop rowing, and suddenly, you move. Not with force, but with flow. The universe didn't change. You did. You stopped resisting. You started listening. And in that stillness, you began to feel something ancient and familiar. Yourself, aligned. This is the art of attuning to the silent signals. Not to chase them, not to interpret them with fear or obsession, but to meet them with presence, with trust, with enough inner stillness to recognize that your best self isn't something you need to create. It's something already encoded in your frequency, waiting to be remembered. The frequency you emit. Maybe hiding your highest self, not everything that blocks your path is visible. In fact, the most persistent obstacles are often energetic, felt but not seen, sensed but not named. You may have dreams, goals, even a deep sense of purpose, yet still feel as if something invisible keeps your progress at arm's length. That something is not a lack of action, intelligence, or desire. It's frequency. Specifically, the unconscious frequency you emit every single day, shaped not by what you say you want, but by what you consistently feel, believe, and embody. It is one of the great paradoxes of personal transformation. We can desire growth and yet vibrate resistance. We can speak words of change while holding on to emotions of fear. Joe Dispenza explains that the body memorizes emotions, and in doing so, it memorizes states of being. A person may consciously wish for expansion, but if their nervous system is conditioned by years of stress, self-doubt, and unworthiness, then their field communicates confusion, and the universe, always faithful to your frequency, responds not to your intentions but to your coherence. Coherence is the alignment between your thoughts, emotions, and energetic signature. It's the harmony between what you say you want and the vibration you carry. When you are coherent, your inner world becomes a magnetic field. But when you are incoherent, when your mind says yes, but your heart whispers no, the signal becomes scrambled. And that scrambled signal is what keeps your highest self from arriving fully into form. Not because you're unworthy of it, but because its frequency can't land in chaos. The body doesn't lie. It is always broadcasting your truest emotional baseline. When you wake up with anxiety, even if you tell yourself you're excited. When you smile through a day filled with internal resistance. When you visualize abundance while secretly fearing loss. These contradictions generate a fragmented vibration, and fragmented vibrations do not manifest clear realities. They manifest confusion, delay, or stagnation. This is not punishment, it's reflection. A mirror asking you to align before you attract. The real block is rarely the world around you. It's the emotional memories stored within you. Each time you didn't speak up, every betrayal you never processed, the longing you suppressed for the sake of survival, they all remain as energetic signatures. The more unconscious they are, the more dominant they become in your field. You don't need to relive them, but you do need to feel their weight, acknowledge their presence, and make space for something new. Transformation doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. Many have fallen into the illusion that speaking affirmations or repeating mantras will override the truth of their vibration. But words without emotional integrity are hollow. Neville Goddard spoke not of affirmations, but of embodiment, feeling as if the wish has already been fulfilled. It's not enough to think positively. You must become the state you wish to attract. Not pretend, not perform. Become. This requires emotional fluency, the ability to notice when fear is masquerading as certainty, or when doubt is disguising itself as logic. Behind every failed manifestation is often an emotional contradiction. A person who longs for love, but unconsciously fears vulnerability. A soul who craves abundance, but still holds guilt around receiving. These energetic conflicts dilute the signal, and what the universe receives is not your vision board. It's your emotional bandwidth. The more unresolved your internal environment, the more difficult it becomes to access the higher frequencies where your best self resides. That version of you is not hiding. It's waiting for the static to clear. This is where the deeper work begins, not in controlling outcomes but in refining energy. The practice of self-honesty is sacred. To ask yourself, not what do I want, but what am I consistently feeling? What am I broadcasting without speaking? How do I show up in moments of stillness when no one is watching and nothing is being demanded of me? Your frequency is most honest in silence, and it is in that silence that the recalibration can begin. Dispenza teaches that elevated emotions like gratitude, joy, and love are not just nice feelings, they are technologies. When practiced consistently, they shift brain chemistry, influence gene expression, and expand your heart's electromagnetic field. But they must be genuine. You cannot fake your way into coherence. You must find the courage to meet the parts of yourself that don't yet believe, to hold space for the sadness, the anger, the fatigue, and to release them not through force, but through gentle witnessing. This work is not glamorous, it is deeply human. It requires patience with your own complexity, compassion for your resistance, and humility to admit when you've been living from fear. But as the emotional debris clears, something beautiful happens. The vibration rises, the mind softens, the body feels safer, and suddenly your field begins to attract experiences that match the clarity you've cultivated within. It is not magic, it is alignment. Your highest self is not a distant ideal. It is a frequency, already coded into your being. You don't need to chase it. You need to create the conditions in which it can emerge. These conditions are not external. They are internal environments of peace, permission, and presence. When you cultivate these states, the version of you that once felt far away becomes the only version that makes sense. If you've been asking for a sign that your transformation is near, this is it. Not because something outside you is changing, but because something inside you is finally ready to feel, ready to release, ready to rise. And as your frequency shifts, so does the world around you. Not as a reward, but as a response. This is the silent law of resonance. You are never punished. You are always mirrored. The invisible journey, how the universe measures readiness. There is a particular kind of silence that doesn't come from absence, but from observation. A silence that arrives not when life pauses, but when life watches. You may feel as if things around you have stalled. No signs, no progress, no clarity. But beneath that stillness, something is being measured, not in words or numbers, but in energy, in how you hold yourself when nothing is happening, in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the way you carry faith through uncertainty. This is the invisible journey, and the universe is not absent. It is paying attention. Many people assume that the path to personal transformation is a series of visible steps, clear progress, tangible milestones, external validation. But the most powerful shifts often begin in the void. in the quiet stretch of time between intention and manifestation. Between the decision to evolve and the arrival of what you've asked for, it's a space where your highest self is invited, but not yet present, where your old self begins to loosen, but not yet release. It is disorienting, humbling, and sacred. Joe Dispenza describes this space as the unknown, the place where the familiar mind has no map and the body no longer finds safety in the past. It's here that the real work happens, not in efforting, but in being. You're not being tested for endurance, but for coherence. The universe is not waiting to see how long you can hold on. It's waiting to see if you can become energetically compatible with the version of life you've asked to receive. This space often feels like a pause, but it's not a void, it's a recalibration, a moment where the universe asks, are you truly ready? Not ready as in impatient, but ready as in aligned. Can you hold the frequency of what you're calling in without needing immediate evidence? Can you walk in the direction of your vision without demanding a guarantee? This is the difference between hoping and knowing, and the universe responds to knowing. It's in this space that many give up, not because their vision was wrong, but because their nervous system could not sustain uncertainty. The survival mind craves immediacy. It wants answers, control, predictability. But transformation is not linear. It's rhythmic, like breath, like tides, like seasons. There is a timing that does not belong to the clock, but to consciousness. And consciousness is not in a hurry. Greg Braden often speaks of the field, a vast, intelligent matrix of energy that records, reflects, and responds to our emotional and vibrational states. This field does not operate by force. It responds to coherence, to consistency, to emotional truth. You may be asking for change, but if your energy is laced with desperation or doubt, the field will wait, not to punish, but to protect. It will not deliver a new frequency into an incoherent vessel. It waits for readiness. Readiness is not perfection. It is congruence. When what you think, feel, and do are in resonance with who you say you want to become, it shows up in how you treat yourself on ordinary days, how you speak to yourself when no one hears. Whether your inner world is a sanctuary or a battlefield, the invisible journey is not a test of worthiness. It is an unfolding of capacity. You are not behind. You are not late. You are in process, and the process is holy. When everything slows down, when answers don't come, when results feel distant, that is often the moment your soul begins to grow roots, not outward, but inward. It is anchoring into something more stable than excitement, more lasting than motivation. It is learning to rest in trust, and that trust becomes the soil where your future will bloom. This is why people often say their greatest breakthroughs came after their deepest silence, not because they finally found the right strategy, but because they stopped trying to manipulate the outcome. They surrendered not in defeat but in reverence. They began to trust that what was not visible could still be real, that what was not yet arriving could still be forming, that the universe was not slow, it was sacred. The invisible journey is not about convincing the universe. It's about convincing yourself, not with logic, but with embodiment. Can you live as if you are already connected to the version of you that has already crossed the bridge? Can you embody peace before the resolution comes? Can you speak with confidence before the answer arrives? Can you love yourself even while waiting? The most aligned manifestations happen when your internal frequency becomes indistinguishable from the outcome you seek, when your joy is no longer conditional, when your peace does not depend on evidence, when your belief is not an escape, but a presence. Then the universe does not need to be asked, it responds. There are no shortcuts through the unknown, but there are sacred ways to move within it, through stillness, through self-observation, through radical honesty, through devotion to the process, not just the promise. This is not passive waiting, it is active becoming. And while others may only see the surface, time passing, silence lingering, what is being built within you is structure, stability, spiritual musculature, a vibration that can hold the life you've asked for. The more time it takes, the deeper the roots. The deeper the roots, the higher the rise. When you begin to understand this, the pause no longer feels empty. It feels full of meaning. You stop fearing the silence, you begin to meet it, listen to it, partner with it, and in doing so, you become the kind of person who no longer waits for signs, because you've become one. Conscious surrender. The pathway to spiritual resonance letting go is often misunderstood. It is not giving up. It is not disengagement. It is not weakness. True surrender is one of the most courageous acts a human being can embody, because it requires the willingness to trust in the unseen, to release the illusion of control, and to allow a greater intelligence to orchestrate the unfolding of your life. Conscious surrender is not passive resignation. It is a sacred agreement with the rhythm of the universe. There is a particular tension that forms when we hold too tightly to outcomes, when we try to force timing, manipulate possibilities, or overanalyze our next steps. We constrict the field of potential around us. Joe Dispenza teaches that elevated states of consciousness, gratitude, love, presence, are expansive in nature, but the energy of control, fear, and urgency creates contraction, and where there is contraction, there is resistance. That resistance sends a signal: I don't trust, and the universe listens. Control is rooted in the past. It arises from the belief that if we don't manage everything, chaos will return. It is often the trauma response of a nervous system that has known instability. But surrender is rooted in presence. It is born not from apathy, but from alignment. When you trust the timing of your own unfolding, you stop forcing flowers to bloom before their season. You realize that what is meant for you cannot be delayed by patience, but it can be repelled by resistance. There is a softness required here, a humility that allows you to admit when your strategies are no longer working, when your pushing is only producing fatigue, when your over-efforting is creating noise instead of clarity. And in that admission, you begin to hear something deeper, a knowing that was always within you, a voice too quiet to compete with your striving. That voice belongs to the version of you who has already let go. Surrender is an inner posture, not an outer action. You may still show up, you may still plan, you may still take aligned steps, but you are no longer moving from fear. You are moving from presence, from clarity, from a state of listening, not chasing. Gregg Braden reminds us that the heart is the most powerful electromagnetic organ in the body. When it is coherent, when it is open and aligned, it becomes a bridge between the seen and the unseen. That bridge is built through trust. Your body knows the difference. When you are acting from fear, even if your steps seem productive, your system feels tight, your breath becomes shallow, your thoughts become obsessive. But when you are in surrender, even your stillness feels active. Your breath deepens, your thoughts slow, your nervous system softens. You feel held, not by outcomes, but by essence. The surrendered state is fertile, it is magnetic. It creates space for miracles, not because you deserve them, but because you are no longer interfering with their arrival. You are no longer insisting on how they must come, or when, or through whom. You trust that what is for you will know the way. And this trust does not make you passive, it makes you powerful. The irony is that true surrender often brings results faster than force, because it removes the static from your field. It makes you more receptive, more intuitive, more attuned to subtle guidance. The signs become clearer, the timing becomes smoother, the resistance dissolves, and life begins to move, not because you made it, but because you became a match for its flow. This path is not without discomfort. Letting go of control can feel like stepping into the void. The part of you that has survived through planning, predicting, and protecting may panic. It will ask, but how will I know? And the answer is you won't. Not in the way your mind wants. You will feel it instead. A quiet alignment, a grounded openness, a readiness without grasping. This is the signature of surrender. There are moments when everything inside you will scream for certainty, when silence will feel like abandonment, when progress will feel impossible to measure. But these are the moments where your faith is being shaped. Not the blind faith that ignores reality, but the embodied faith that trusts the intelligence of timing. The surrender that says, even when I do not see the path, I will walk in resonance with what I know is true. This truth is not in books. It's not in teachings. It lives inside you. It speaks through your intuition, your dreams, your subtle nudges. But you cannot hear it when you are busy fixing, proving, or rushing. You hear it when you become still enough to receive. Surrender creates that stillness. It is not a void, it is a sanctuary. You may have thought that manifestation required more effort, that you needed to hustle your way into a new timeline. But the deeper truth is this: sometimes your next level is not about more doing. It's about less interference, less noise, less force. The most powerful version of you may not be the one who achieves the most, but the one who trusts the most. So what happens when you finally stop pushing? You begin to align, you begin to hear, you begin to feel the quiet guidance that was always beneath the surface, and that guidance, once followed, will take you not just to your goals, but to yourself. The version of you who does not strive to be enough because they already are. The still voice that leads you home. There is a part of you that has never been lost, a presence within that has always known the way, long before you had the words to ask, before you had the courage to listen, before you understood that your longing was, in truth, your guidance. Throughout this journey, we have not only explored how the universe speaks, but remembered how deeply it listens, not to your performance, but to your presence, not to your fear, but to your frequency. Joe Dispenza reminds us that the future we seek isn't something we chase, it's something we become. And becoming doesn't start with effort. It begins with awareness. When you pause, truly pause, the signs become clear. You stop waiting for external proof and begin trusting the subtle wisdom already moving through you. You stop begging for change and begin radiating alignment. You stop searching for your best self and begin remembering that you've always been becoming her. You are not being tested. You are being invited. Invited to slow down enough to feel, to quiet the noise long enough to notice, to release control long enough to receive. The signs were never hidden. You were simply moving too fast, thinking too loud, and trusting too little. But now you are remembering. There is no need to fear the silence. Within it lives the entire universe. Every frequency, every answer, every future you desire is encoded there, waiting not for permission but for resonance. When you align with the truth of who you are, life doesn't just respond. It becomes a mirror so clear, so exact, that you'll no longer need to ask for signs. You'll recognize that you are one, and in that moment of recognition, you'll understand. The universe was never outside of you. It was always trying to bring you back home, to the version of yourself that no longer doubts, no longer chases, and no longer waits to become whole. Now reflect deeply. What if everything you've been waiting for is already waiting for you, just on the other side of your surrender? If this message touched something inside you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Let this space continue to guide you, challenge you, and walk with you. And if you're ready to take this journey even deeper, stay with us. There's another video waiting for you right here on the screen. Your next step may be only one breath away. Keep going. You're not alone.